Hi, folks. Good morning. Glad you could be here. It is Friday. Thank goodness. It's a Friday in June. I don't even know what day it is. June 5th. How about that? As I look down at my phone, glad y'all can be here. Do me a favor, hit the share button. I did already. And like this thing, share it with your friends because today is going to be a very good show. It's going to be packed. And so with that, I actually want to get started. I want to make the most of our 30 minutes. So good morning. Welcome to the 44th episode of FinTech Insider, the Breakfast Show US. I'm Stan Malm, 11FS Managing Director in North America, and I'll be your host for this morning's show. Let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear where you are based from all over the world. Please share the link to this stream, that little share button you can see down the bottom. Click on it, send it out there. Hit that like button, and please subscribe to 11FS on LinkedIn so you never miss a show. If you haven't read our latest research yet, the link is in the post here, but it's really fantastic. It's about the needs of SMB owners in the U.S. and how financial institutions can make propositions to better serve them. Head to bit.ly/DIGITASMB or click the link in the post. Also, we released a research report together with Plaid, or Visa, or Plaid at Visa, or Visa at Plaid, about how open finance will shape the industry. You can get that one at bit.ly/Open Finance 2020. That's a great report. All right, first off, 3 news stories from the past 24 hours that caught my attention, and they should have yours. The New York Times, the big story today: unemployment in the U.S. unexpectedly falls in May. The unemployment rate fell to 13.3% in May. The Labor Department said Friday, an unexpected improvement in the nation's job market. Economists had expected the rate to increase to as much as 20% after it hit 14.7% in April, which was the highest since the government began keeping official statistics after World War II. The economy, according to the Labor Department, added 2.5 million jobs after a record loss of 20.7 million in April, which would be the highest job count since World War II, by the way. And we'll dive a little bit into those numbers with Michael, our guest. Next, American Banker reports Citi saw a surge in corporate online account opening amid the pandemic. Corporate clients of Citi's Treasury and Trade Solutions unit ramped up their use of its online banking platform. That platform, Citi Direct BE, is used by large multi-international institutions as well as small and mid-sized firms to make payments to suppliers, pay bills and taxes, collect money, and ensure they have ample cash flow. The platform's online overall addition in numbers jumped 24% in online and app users in March compared to the previous years. I don't think anybody should be shocked by that. And finally, an email by Goldman Sachs Group employee about his experience of racial injustice and criticizing managers at the Wall Street Bank for not supporting junior bankers from diverse backgrounds went viral at the firm this week. The email by Frederick Baba, a managing director of the bank who is Black, coincides with other Wall Street executives and companies speaking out against racial inequality after the death of George Floyd. On Tuesday, Bank of America pledged $1 billion to help communities address racial and economic inequality. Goldman Sachs on Wednesday announced a $10 million fund for racial equality. The CEOs of JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo have also made statements denouncing racism, and a post by the CFO at Citi is still one of my favorites on this subject. And again, we'll talk about that story. So why don't we bring in our guest now? Today, we're thrilled to welcome back Michael Schlein, President and CEO of Accion. Today, we're going to talk about financial resilience before and after COVID-19. We'll talk about the job numbers that we just saw. We will talk a little bit about how CEOs and presidents of companies are addressing the social unrest in the U.S. right now. With all that said, Michael, how are you?
You know, given what's going on in the world, I'm doing fine, but these are crazy days. How are you?
These are crazy days. I will start right there. I couldn't agree more. Every morning when I wake up and I read the news, I'm just wondering what I'm going to see next. We'll just put it that way. That seems to be the recurring theme. I can't tell you day to day what the big story is going to be. Are you in New York right now?
Yeah, my family and I are at the epicenter, but we stayed in New York. And I tell you, it's not only the epicenter, but yesterday we went out as a family to one of the big protests and memorial for George Floyd, and it was incredible to see so many people turn out amidst the pandemic.
Yeah,
it's the combination of the two. It's amazing.
It is. I said this yesterday during the show. If a script writer put this together, meaning if 2020 was a movie script that was getting pitched, nobody would make it. It wouldn't happen. No, there's for those of you that didn't know, there's also an asteroid that's coming toward Earth. Yay! Why not? At this point, earthquakes in California. It is a incredible time. And I wanted to ask you this. Again, you're the CEO and president of Accion, and yesterday during a consultancy call with 11FS, when I was on the team with London, I was just talking about everything that's happening in the U.S. right now and the situation. And I was very frank and honest with folks about it. And it was the feedback I was getting on Slack and an email from the team about, come on, Sam, hey, we feel for you, we're praying for you, chin up, we're praying for the U.S. and everything else was heartfelt and it meant a lot. I'd love to get your reaction on, that story I just talked about with Goldman Sachs. I mean, what have you done with your company with respect to the social unrest that's going on and COVID? I mean, take your pick.
We had it was actually Accion is a global nonprofit, and where we many of our staff work remotely, but we have offices in Boston and DC and Bogota and Mumbai, and so almost everything we're very global, and so we're feeling the pandemic and the global impact, and it's particularly hard because people, like everyone's now working from home, and we're pretty flexible that way. We can work from home, but it's hard because I think people, especially with the protests in the U.S. right now, and now they're increasingly around the world, I do think people wanted to come together, and so we've had a couple of conversations, and I have to say it was deeply moving. People really just needed to talk about their own experience and the fear and the anxiety, and I do think the pandemic and the protests are related. I think the pandemic is hitting people of color, African Americans, Latinos, way much harder than the majority, and it's really challenging. And so I think it was a little cathartic to just get everyone to talk. I think that's what people need to do.
I agree. They need to talk and they need to listen. Right. I'm going to send the link out to everybody. I actually saw this post yesterday and shared it. And Michael, I'll share it with you. It was just a story on Twitter about the comedian Dave Chappelle, who, one, this guy's hilarious, but also how he had talked about race prior to everything that's going on right now on stage one time. It had a woman in the audience kind of heckle a little bit. And Chappelle, as a comedian on stage, didn't go off on her. He actually just explained his experience of, as a Black man in the U.S. With law enforcement and others when it comes to race. And he said at the end of the set, the audience normally, especially if at a Dave Chappelle show, it's very raucous. He said he could have dropped a pin in the room, and that the owner of the club actually came backstage after and said, "Hey, the lady that had kind of heckled is there with her friend. She'd like to talk to you." And he's like, "Great, bring her back." And, she was crying and apologized. And he goes, "Don't apologize. You listened. That's all we wanted. That's what I wanted." And he's like, "Come here." He goes, "Let's take a picture." And she said, "Really?" And he goes, "Yes, that's what friends do." And he goes, "You did the right thing. You listened."
Yeah.
I think that's a skill set.
I totally agree. Our conversation was really people just sharing and listening. And listen, the protests, it was a memorial. George Floyd's brother was here in Brooklyn, and thousands of people showed up. And it's so much deeper. Obviously, it wasn't just that he was suffocated for 9 minutes by the police. It really is hundreds of years of systemic discrimination, and especially let's talk about bankings and financial services. Today, generally speaking, the banks might offer $1 million loan to a company that has 3 years of audited financials and a good credit history. So who's left out? Who doesn't? You're exactly. Basically talking about African Americans and Latinos and women and young people who are just getting into the workforce, and people who are just returning to the workforce, and they basically are left out. The banking system doesn't work for them. A lot of the work, actually, not only in the U.S. but all around the world, is to try to create a banking system, a financial system that works for the people that are left out.
Yeah, and folks. Michael knows this, and our producer knows it. I'm having a hard time today with everything that's going on. Also, my nephew, whose name's Sam, who's diagnosed with Hodgkin's, he's in the hospital right now. Kid's only 27 years old. My sister called me literally as Michael and I was talking. So if I choke up a little bit, it's just been a lot. And Kurt, president at TAB Bank and Tab Bank in Utah, just made a comment. Let's make a commitment to progress today. I commit to conducting listening sessions next week with his entire staff. That's a president of a bank saying that, and Michael is the CEO and president with Accion. I know you take that same position. So again, folks, I apologize if I'm a little bit emotional today. This is a tough one for me. But let's talk about your company, Michael, because I absolutely love it. I love what the mission is. Can you you touched on it briefly,
Sure.
but let's go global, because you all are,
Sure.
and have been doing this since what, 60, I don't remember, 60, in the 60s, right?
1961.
There you go.
So Accion has been around for many decades now, and we're dedicated to creating a financially inclusive world. Let me just take a moment to put that in terms that people can understand. We all, and I listen to your show. I'm a big fan, by the way. We all take for granted that we have credit cards and debit cards and ATMs that are available, and you can get insurance for fire and for your health, and you can get credit to build a business. And think about this: we take for granted that, generally speaking, your bills come in on a monthly basis and your income comes in on a monthly basis, and that is really convenient. But for 3 billion people, nearly half the world, they have none of that, and their lives are so much harder than they have to be, because they don't have those basic financial tools. So a typical woman living in poverty is a farmer, and she gets paid once a year at the time of the harvest. Now think about this. She has to make that money work all year round, and yet she lacks a safe place to save. Think about that, a safe place to save. Again, there are banks in New York, there are banks on every corner, and we don't even think about that. But also, she may have to spend hours going to make a single payment to keep the lights on, or to pay for school for her kids. And she lives in a completely cash world. So when she makes those payments, she's not developing a credit history. She can't get insurance, yet she lives on a farm where there can be a drought or a flood, and there's no one to give her credit to actually build her business. And that's what we're trying to change. And this show in particular, you guys talk all the time about the extraordinary fintech revolution and the digital revolution that we're living in, and the extraordinary innovation. What we're trying to do is harness that innovation to find new ways of meeting the financial needs of the poor. And so that's our mission, and that's our work. And we're one of the leaders in harness in fintech for inclusion. We invest, we build, we support. Over our history now, we've worked with 120 financial service providers in 50 countries. We've helped to build them and grow them, and now they serve millions of clients all around the world.
And again, 11FS are we're just very big fans of Accion and what they do, and that concept. And if ever there was a time that was needed for this, Michael, the impact of COVID, right? You talked about it in the U.S., right? It's really hit lower income families. It's really hit the Black community, the Hispanic community, the rate of deaths. There was one point in St. Louis back in March where the only deaths were Black residents there. It is not evenly distributed. And with you and your company, you're seeing this on a global scale. What's been the impact? What do you see?
And I think we're, unfortunately, I think we're just getting started. Again, a little bit of optimism that in New York City, the curves are starting, in the US, the curves are heading in the right direction. But I think let's just be sure, that doesn't mean that just means we're getting better at spreading it out. That just means but I really think this is only now beginning to roil through some of the emerging markets. And I worry a great deal. I'm generally a pretty optimistic person, but I think when you look at Sao Paulo and Rio and Mumbai and Lagos, there, here we have, you can lock yourself in your house and you have running water and you can wash your hands, and we have a fairly decent, public health infrastructure. In many of the countries in the emerging markets, billions of people don't have running water at their homes. They live in areas where you can't social distance at all. And the public health infrastructure is weak on a good day, much less when it's overwhelmed. And I think, maybe we're making a little progress. Maybe even the jobs report is positive news. But I do think that the virus is going to be with us for quite some time. Even the most optimistic projections on creating vaccine have it, months away, and even further to actually have it deployed on a global scale. And so I think this is with us for a long, long time. And I think I don't think any country is out of danger yet.
So I want to get your feedback on this story that I was told on Wednesday night. So the audience here, I think you're pretty sure, most of you know I do a virtual happy hour every Wednesday night with a mix of bankers, folks from fintech and across different industries. About 7 people, we get on and we just talk, no agenda. And excuse me, and the last one we had, a friend of mine, Bill Arningstall, he works with cities in Silicon Valley, but he just literally moved from Johannesburg, where he ran cities practice for forever and a day. He was telling me that he was working with a group around refugees and around financial inclusion in the continent of Africa, right? So again, here's one of the city leads in Johannesburg. So this guy knows banking inside and out. But when he talked down and he was talking about how they can improve people's lives, and they had like an open forum for this, somebody came to him and said, "Do you have the Somalia trade union here?" And he said, "Why would I have the Somalia trade union here? This is Johannesburg." And he said, "Because 70% of the cash that moves in South Africa goes through the hands of the Somalia trade union." Because essentially what happened is you have undocumented Somalian workers in Johannesburg, a rich city, and in South Africa that move the money back home. And by the way, when I say move the cash, not electronically, cash back home, the distance from Somalia to Johannesburg is greater than the distance of Charlotte, North Carolina to San Francisco. They do it by hand, everybody. That's the type of solutions that you're trying to address, right? Those are the not solutions, those are the problems that you're looking to address.
So literally, so again, we're an early stage fintech investor. We have 2 vehicles. One is called Venture Lab, which is probably the leading seed stage investor in fintech for inclusion in the world. And our partner Quona, we've created the Accion Frontier Inclusion Fund, which is the world's first global fintech fund for the underserved. And they focus on early and growth stage, and Venture Lab focuses on seed. But it's all about fintech for inclusion. And between those 2, we see incredible innovation. One in particular, a company called Now Money in the UAE is trying to solve exactly the problem you just mentioned. The migrant workers come to the UAE and then they're trying to send money home, and they work 6 days a week. And on the 7th day, they have to spend hours trying to send their cash home. And basically what Now Money is doing is digitizing that whole process so that the companies they work for can pay digitally into direct accounts, and then they can, with a phone, push a button and send money home and get back, so much time. And it's very, very important because, again, cash can be lost and stolen, and and again, you don't build a credit history. We can make things a lot easier. And again, you have people on your show all the time. Whether it's data analytics, the Internet of Things, machine to machine technology, satellite imagery. We are living in an incredible time, and what we're trying to do is harness all that innovation to help 3 billion people who are left out of the global financial system. It used to be that when you were thinking about this population, people said, "Oh, the distances are too far to be commercially viable." Well, today there's no distance that's too far to be commercially viable. And it used to be that the transaction sizes were seen as too small to be commercially viable. And again, today there's no such thing. So we're living in this time of innovation. And I really do think we can, in our lifetime, create a financially inclusive world where billions of people come into the financial system.
So I love that you talked about the UAE as an example for this. So The only reason I know these stats is because I did some work and spoke in Dubai on multiple occasions. So the UAE, roughly 20% of the population are expats. I mean, that's an amazing stat, but it gets even more telling when you look at Dubai itself. 85% of the population of Dubai are not natives, are not from that country, aren't from that city. 85%, it's the highest population in the world in that case that are moving money and are moving wealth, right? Dubai is an incredibly wealthy town. And every time you go there, you've seen the skyscraper, the skyline changes literally every time I go there.
Yeah.
I mean, it just does. You land at the airport and you're like, oh, that's new. I mean, you know that.
Also, the disparity, the extreme wealth and the extreme poverty. You can see it all there.
Yeah. So great question from Sunaina at M Science, who's on. She's going to be on next week, by the way, everybody. See, if you watch and participate in the show, odds are I'm going to get you on as a guest. So Sunaina noted, India is a country where we know for a fact microfinancing works. And a few others are Bolivia, Cambodia, Indonesia. What's preventing other countries to adopt and follow this method? What are some of the challenges, and how are you helping at Accion?
Well, in fact, India is, in the world of financial inclusion, I do think that India is sort of the center of innovation these days, and the leadership, the government, the Reserve Bank of India, and the Modi government deserve a lot of credit for putting in place a whole set of innovations and regulations that have created an environment that have spurred entrepreneurs to try to solve these problems. If in the U.S., people are always chasing the affluent market, but if you're in India, if you're in China, if you're in Southeast Asia, if you're in Indonesia, this is the market, and so we're seeing extraordinary innovation. I'll give you an example. We invested in a company called Toffee. Toffee is based in India, and they literally, like the name implies, they have bite-size insurance. So a lot of people, I have insurance. I don't know exactly what I'm covered for. It's not transparent. It's expensive. Toffee is trying to break through all of that. So in dengue fever season, you can get dengue fever insurance for $6. Very, very specific. If you buy a bicycle, you can get bike insurance for that bicycle for a year for $6. So it's very transparent, very, very clear, and very, very specific, which is revolutionary in the world of insurance. And of course, you can only do it because it's digital over your phone. And they're one of the companies that has sort of pivoted in light of the pandemic. So all of a sudden now they've got a new product for, if you lose your job, they'll pay you, that you can get insurance for job loss. So we're seeing these fintech companies are smart and nimble and creative and responding to the circumstances of the pandemic. We're seeing that in a bunch of different places.
So I want to level set for the audience that's watching this. A lot of times, some of the criticism I hear of companies like Accion or nonprofits, right, that are really trying to do and change financial services and focus on financial inclusion, that they just don't understand the complexities of it. So Michael, let's just go ahead and level set, and correct me if I'm wrong on this. I'm gonna do it off the top of my head. Besides being an executive at Citi, you are also the chief of staff for the SEC. You're the chief of staff for the deputy mayor of New York City, whose GDP itself rivals that of, I don't know how many countries globally. I get those right?
Yes,
Thank you.
I like to. I spent a dozen years in public service, both at the New York City and the federal level, and then I spent a dozen years at Citigroup. And to some degree, when you're working in public service, you're trying to make the world a better place. And at Citi, I saw the tremendous power of financial services, and I like to think that Accion for me is the best of both worlds. I get to, every day we're trying to make the world better, but we're a nonprofit. We need philanthropic support, but we're also trying to harness the capital markets towards the social end of trying to create a financially inclusive world. So it sort of combines everything I've ever done. So for me, it's great.
So 2 quick questions, because I love getting the audience questions in here, because we're starting to get up against the clock. So Kevin asked, here in the U.S., do you think the government's recent guidelines and recommendations to banks to better help the underbanked through small dollar lending, do you believe such results may show up in partnerships between FIs and fintech companies that can help provide this technology?
I think that the role of a regulator is very, very hard, and it's not just in the U.S. We're seeing all this innovation, and it's very hard for regulators to keep up with it. I was a regulator for several years. Regulators don't love innovation. They like to just approve the same thing they've already approved over and over again.
Yes,
they're by nature cautious and not very bold. But I do think I've seen a lot of innovators, a lot of regulators trying to really figure out the new technologies and be supportive. So I do think people are trying to do it. I think it's also very hard, and we're seeing it in the pandemic too. Governments, the US and governments all around the world, focus on the banking system, and the banking system hasn't worked for small mom and pop shops all around the world and for the base of the pyramid. And so we, Accion and others, have helped to build microfinance institutions, and in the US, they're called community development financial institutions, and they are all getting squeezed right now because regulators in crisis, governments in crisis, focus on the big banks. So if I had a message, I would say to, we want the regulators to really focus on the most vulnerable people and the institutions that serve them and try to get through this together.
Yeah, so I'll make a Sam Mall commentary and then I'll leave it alone. The thing that we've seen in 2020, like I said, the Dow, I haven't looked, right before the show was up almost 800 points. And the market throughout COVID has actually done pretty well, despite, some significant drops in early March. I will flat out say the wealth gap in the US has increased significantly in the past year, as it has over the past couple of years. Let me just say, if you have money, you're being serviced well. You are.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be blunt. You're doing well. I'm seeing a lot of institutions that are our clients and who we love and who we work with. We work with some of the largest banks in the world. There's a significant shift to focus on private wealth and wealth management for solutions. Good. That's, hey, everybody needs service, but damn it, it's okay to also focus on the 3 billion people that you mentioned.
Right.
It's so you can spread the wealth a little bit, folks.
So it's on your website that 11FS, you guys believe that digital banking is only 1% finished, and that you're trying to build for the 99%. And I totally agree with that. But I would modify that a little bit, because too often fintech entrepreneurs are focused on the top 1%. And I would encourage them to focus on the 99%. Not only can you have a enormous social impact, but you can also have a great financial return. You can change people's lives and also build sustainable, scalable, profitable companies that are making a big difference.
Yeah, let me give you an example, everybody, and then we have to stop. Believe it or not, we're up against the hour. Nubank in Brazil is up to 25 million customers now. And when they started that company, they were flat out told there's no way it would work. It wouldn't. I've talked to the founders. I love them. They're a lot of fun and fascinating. And they come out of the banking industry in Brazil, and it can be done. And it can be done at scale, and it can be done where you're profitable. All right, folks, but unfortunately, we're up against the hour. Michael, where's the best place for our listeners, one, to find out more about you, and more importantly, because I do love you, but more importantly, Accion?
Sure. Check out our website, accion.org, accion.org. It's a whole wealth of information on what's going on all around the world in fintech, and focused on the base of the pyramid. And of course, we're a 501c3 and need your support to do the work we do.
Amen. All right, everybody. Thanks. It's been an interesting week. Our guests have been great. Michael, thank you for being here. Monday, I'll be talking with Rianne Horgan. She's from Kinder. I love Rianne. Great company, and actually focused on, you'd call it age tech. I think that's a nice way of saying it for the more gray-haired crowd like myself. Folks, if you know anyone that'd be perfect to come on the show, don't hesitate to reach out. Ping me at Sam Mall on Twitter, Sam at 11FS, or at breakfastshow@11fs.com. Everybody have a great weekend, and just do me a favor. Take a minute to pause and actually listen. Okay? Let's all make that commitment. We'll see y'all next week.